While the world obsesses over China's manufacturing dominance and America's tech giants, something fascinating is happening 12,000 kilometers south of the equator. Australia, a nation with just 0.3% of the world's population, controls 52% of global lithium production, pioneered marine pharmaceutical compounds, saving lives worldwide, and quietly became the Southern Hemisphere space technology hub. By the end of this video, you'll understand 5 industries where Australia has become an unexpected global powerhouse, why this economic positioning matters for the future of clean energy and technology, and what this reveals about how nations build strategic advantages in the 21st century. Before we continue, hit subscribe now, because we're breaking down economic shifts that most analysts overlook, and you'll want these insights in your feed as global markets continue evolving. Let's start with the industry that's putting Australia at the center of the electric vehicle revolution: lithium production. When you think about electric vehicles, you probably think about Tesla's California factories or China's BYD manufacturing plants. But here's what most people don't realize. The critical component enabling every EV on the road starts its journey in Western Australia. In 2023, when Tesla needed to secure long-term lithium supplies for its Berlin gigafactory, negotiations didn't lead to South America's lithium triangle or Chinese processing facilities. They led to Greenbushes, a small town in Western Australia, home to the world's largest hard rock lithium mine. This single operation produces 40% of global lithium supply. But Australia's dominance goes beyond just digging up raw materials. According to the Australian Trade Commission's 2024 report, the country exported $17.6 billion worth of lithium compounds last year, representing a 320% increase from 2020. This isn't just extraction anymore. It's an integrated supply chain involving refining partnerships with Asian manufacturers and direct sales agreements with battery producers. Dr. Margaret Chun, a resources economist at the University of Melbourne, puts it this way: Australia has created strategic leverage in the clean energy transition that rivals OPEC's historical influence over oil markets. Every major automaker's EV production timeline depends, at some level, on Australian lithium supply chains. Here's the practical takeaway. Australia's position means it influences global EV pricing, battery technology development timelines, and which countries can realistically meet their clean energy targets. As the International Energy Agency projects that lithium demand will increase 40-fold by 2040, this dominance becomes even more strategically significant. The lesson here is about evolution. Australia moved from simple resource extraction to controlling multiple points in the value chain, creating economic leverage that extends far beyond commodity pricing. But Australia's industrial dominance isn't limited to what's beneath the ground. Let's explore how it's revolutionizing what happens beneath the ocean. Australia has 36,000 kilometers of coastline, the 6th longest in the world. Those waters harbor something potentially more valuable than any mineral deposit: unique marine organisms producing chemical compounds that pharmaceutical companies worldwide are racing to understand and synthesize. Let me give you a specific example. In Hobart, researchers at Cyros Marine Laboratories spent years studying cone snails, predatory mollusks that use venomous harpoons to paralyze prey. They isolated a compound that became the basis for Prialt, a pain medication that's 1,000 times more potent than morphine. Today, when chronic pain patients have exhausted every other option, doctors turn to this medication derived from Australian marine research. This isn't an isolated success. A 2023 study published in Nature Biotechnology documented that 40% of new marine-derived pharmaceutical compounds currently in clinical trials worldwide originate from Australian waters. To put this in context, the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park alone contains an estimated 1,500 fish species and 400 coral types, many producing unique chemical defenses that evolution refined over millions of years. Dr. James Rodriguez, a marine biologist at James Cook University, explains the advantage. Australian waters represent a largely untapped pharmaceutical library because of unique evolutionary isolation. Species here developed chemical compounds that don't exist anywhere else on Earth. The practical significance extends beyond current medications. This research pipeline could yield breakthrough treatments for cancer, antibiotic-resistant infections, and neurological disorders over the next decade. Marine organisms that evolved chemical defenses against predators are teaching us how to fight diseases that resist conventional treatments. For investors and researchers, the trend is clear. Biomimicry from Australian marine ecosystems is becoming a focal point for pharmaceutical innovation. The question isn't whether these compounds will produce more breakthrough drugs, it's how many and how quickly. From ocean depths to outer space, Australia's next dominance area might surprise you even more. While NASA and SpaceX dominate headlines, Australia quietly became the Southern Hemisphere's space technology hub, and it's happening faster than most people realize. Here's a concrete example of what this looks like. In Adelaide, a startup called Myriota developed satellite IoT technology that's now tracking millions of remote sensors globally. These aren't sophisticated devices. They're simple, low-power sensors costing less than $5 each. But they're monitoring water levels in remote African villages, tracking shipping containers crossing oceans, and helping farmers measure soil moisture across vast properties, all transmitting data through Myriota's satellite network. The numbers tell the growth story. According to the Australian Space Agency's 2024 report, the sector expanded from $3.9 billion in 2020 to $12.4 billion in 2024, with 85% growth specifically in satellite manufacturing. Between 2020 and 2024, 47 international space companies established operations in Australia. But why Australia? Geography plays a crucial role. Australia's location provides ideal ground station positioning for satellite communications covering the Asia-Pacific region, Indian Ocean, and Antarctic zones. The Woomera test range spans 122,000 square kilometers, making it the world's largest land-based test range for aerospace systems. There's also a regulatory advantage. Dr. Priya Kapoor, a space industry analyst, notes, Australia's regulatory approval processes move significantly faster than equivalents in Europe or North America, while maintaining rigorous safety standards. For companies needing to test and launch quickly, that speed matters enormously. The practical takeaway is this. Australia's positioning means it influences how satellite internet deploys across the Southern Hemisphere, who controls Earth observation data collection for this region, and how space debris is tracked for half the planet. As satellite constellations multiply, Australia's ground infrastructure and manufacturing capacity become increasingly critical to global space operations. This isn't about prestige projects or national pride. It's about controlling essential infrastructure for telecommunications, climate monitoring, and navigation systems that billions of people rely on daily. But Australia's technological edge isn't just about hardware. There's a knowledge-based industry where it's become unexpectedly dominant. You might know that Australia is the world's third largest exporter of international education services, after the United States and United Kingdom. But here's the part that doesn't make headlines. Australia's real dominance is in educational technology platforms and qualification frameworks that other countries are adopting wholesale. In 2022, when Vietnam's government decided to modernize its vocational education system, it didn't just send students to study abroad. It adopted Australia's competency-based training framework. Today, 2.3 million Vietnamese students learn through Australian-designed curricula assessed against Australian qualification standards, without ever setting foot in Australia. The Australian Bureau of Statistics reported that education exports reached $28.6 billion in 2024. But educational technology licensing and framework adoption added another $4.2 billion in economic value that often doesn't get counted in traditional trade statistics. Here's what makes this interesting. Platforms like Open University's Australia pioneered micro-credentials and stackable qualifications, short courses that combine into recognized degrees. UNESCO now recommends these models globally because they make education more accessible and flexible. Australia essentially beta-tested approaches that are becoming the global standard. Dr. Lin Zhao, an education economist at the University of Sydney, frames it this way: Australia essentially exported its quality assurance system. The Australian qualifications framework is now used or adapted by 34 countries. When Malaysia validates a technical certificate or Chile accredits a university program, they're often using Australian quality standards as the blueprint. The practical significance extends beyond immediate revenue. This creates long-term economic ties and soft power influence. Students trained in Australian systems become familiar with Australian businesses, practices, and standards. Governments that adopt Australian educational frameworks often turn to Australian institutions for ongoing support and updates. As online education continues growing, Australia's quality assurance models become increasingly valuable intellectual property. The future of education isn't just about where students study. It's about whose standards define what quality education means. And in that domain, Australia is setting benchmarks that much of the world is adopting. Finally, there's one more industry where Australia's dominance affects your daily life in ways you probably haven't considered. Australia's harsh climate has always been a challenge for farmers. But that challenge forced innovation. And now, Australian agricultural technology is helping farmers worldwide produce more food with dramatically less water. Let me show you how this plays out in practice. In 2023, a farmer in Maharashtra, India, implemented Australian-developed soil moisture sensing systems combined with drip irrigation technology. These weren't theoretical improvements. His water usage dropped 60%, while crop yields increased 35%. The technology he used was originally perfected in Australia's Murray-Darling Basin, one of the driest agricultural regions on Earth. According to Agriculture Victoria research published in 2024, Australian agtech exports grew 280% since 2019. Precision agriculture systems developed in Australia are now used across 45 million hectares globally. That's an area larger than Sweden. What makes Australian agricultural technology distinctive? These systems include satellite-guided variable rate fertilizer application that adjusts nutrients to soil conditions in real time, drone-based crop health monitoring that identifies problems before they're visible to the human eye, and AI systems that predict optimal harvest timing based on weather patterns and market conditions. Here's the competitive advantage. Australian farmers routinely manage properties spanning thousands of hectares with minimal labor. That forced automation and efficiency improvements that farmers in more densely populated regions simply didn't need to develop. As Dr. Kofi Mensah, an agricultural engineer, explains, Australian farmers operate at scales and efficiency levels that make them ideal testing grounds for agtech solutions that need to work anywhere in the world. The practical takeaway is urgent. As climate change intensifies and water scarcity spreads, Australian agricultural technology becomes increasingly critical for global food security. These systems are being rapidly adapted for use in California's Central Valley, Spain's agricultural regions, and drought-affected areas across Africa and South America. This isn't about incremental improvement. It's about whether regions can continue growing food as traditional water sources become unreliable. Australian technology, born from necessity, is providing answers. So let's bring this together. Australia's industrial dominance across these 5 sectors isn't accidental or temporary. It's the result of strategic resource management, geographic advantages that create unique opportunities, sustained research investment, and necessity-driven innovation. There's a common thread running through everything we've discussed. Australia turned constraints into competitive advantages. A small population meant automating agriculture. Geographic isolation meant developing satellite communications expertise. Harsh climates meant pioneering water-efficient farming. Distance from major markets meant building integrated supply chains for lithium processing. These 5 industries, lithium production, marine biotechnology, space technology, educational frameworks, and agricultural technology, position Australia as a critical node in global supply chains for clean energy, healthcare innovation, telecommunications infrastructure, education standards, and sustainable food production. Here's why this matters globally. As the world faces resource constraints, climate adaptation challenges, and a need for sustainable development, Australia's industrial expertise becomes increasingly valuable. The innovations developed for Australia's unique conditions often provide solutions for challenges the rest of the world is just beginning to face. Here's what I'm curious about. Given Australia's small population but outsized industrial influence, which of these 5 sectors do you think will be most strategically important by 2035, and why? Will it be lithium as EVs become ubiquitous? Space technology as satellite infrastructure expands? Or agricultural technology as climate change affects global food production? Share your perspective in the comments below. I'm genuinely interested in hearing different viewpoints on this. And if you found this valuable, subscribe for more deep dives into global economic trends that are reshaping our world. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.